digitally, and I happen to have quite a network in blockchain and understand, because of the blockchain legislation stuff, really what's happening in Q1. So in finance, everyone breaks it down in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. So that's what we do for Continuum Market. And basically, what Mitch tried to throw at me as what's the history of blockchain. That's what he really threw at me. So to break this down for the cousins, I'm going to try and keep this like lowest denominator possible rather than super PhD style. So we're going to take, at Continuum, we have 3 levels of detail. And the first level of detail is for a 5-year-old. If you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you're probably not an authority. And for the brands that we have, they're so complex that if they can't explain it to a 5-year-old, then they can't explain it for SEC compliance and governance and regulation and things like that. So we say you have to be able to explain it for a 5-year-old. If you come into Continuum Market, you're essentially coming in to be peer reviewed from the highest levels of technologists, thought leaders, legislators, and compliance officers. If you come on Continuum Market, you come on and you say, I would say this in front of a congressional grand jury. You're saying what your brand is, for better or worse, where you are right now, and channel to be able to update your growth as a blockchain brand to be able to say where you've moved to. Now, there is about 7,000 known coins, right? That's just the coins. Now, most blockchain right now is coins, but blockchain is a giant, huge thing that you guys can't even wrap your minds around. Give it like the Jetsons future. That is what blockchain could be. A small subset of that is the dollar bills that you keep in your wallet. And that's what cryptocurrency, and that's what people like to talk about, right? But 8 years ago, basically, really, it's like 10 years ago, because you've got, when Satoshi launched, but you got the white paper, blah, blah, blah. 8 years ago, Bitcoin comes on the scene. It's not really known much. It is, so in the industry, Bitcoin is known as a decentralized autonomous organization. That means it has no person in the middle of it. The system runs by itself like a computer without anybody having to push a button. It means no centralized point of failure. The other interesting thing about Bitcoin is it is a limited supply system. And the more it is mathematically created to increase in value, the more it is adopted. And it goes into very small, finite pieces, kind of like taking a penny and chopping it up with scissors. You chop it up into teeny tiny little pieces. That's how many Bitcoins there are. You can chop it up into infinitely small, little teeny tiny pieces. So Bitcoin comes on famously from Satoshi Nakamoto, a him, a her, a they, a them, an alien, who knows, doesn't matter, it's here. Pandora's box is open. And basically what you have is a payment system on a blockchain network. And the big question mark up until 2021 was that it have a store of value. And so the evolution to get from the time that it came out on the scene to where it is now, to say that it has a store of value, I've been from the height of it, which was like, it was like at 15 and it goes up to 20 and it's like, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. And then it plummeted down. It was terrible. And then it was like climbing back up and then, okay, it's going to be the greatest thing ever. And it was like 11. And then it was another crypto winter and it plummeted down to like 3,000. And then we've made the climb back out since gutter of 2020 March landslide. How do I know this? I've been looking at the Wall Street trading aspect correlation of all of these coins, specifically 40 of them that I care about in their behavior, and the traditional capital market correlations of things like commodities, precious metals, edibles, things to eat as human beings that move around the world, and things called supply chains. And so all of these things are applications of blockchain technology, and the market's a secondary factor of the underlying assets. So we've gone in 8 years from having Bitcoin to having 7,000, some say 12,000 coin in circulation right now, in technologists, in flight, either piggybacking what we call forks, right? So there's an entire fork family, either piggybacking or somehow operating in this digital asset economy, this new economy that exists. Why is that cool? Because that has created the infrastructure to go even more granular into economy for your time, for your work, for your thought, for your efforts. That's called NFTs. And I just released a report called Stablecoins NFTs in California. We're having Ali Medina from California Legislation come on our first Continuum Blockchain Legislation Summit Friday the 19th, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, for 1 hour of content around what is California trying to do for blockchain legislation? What are they paving the path to set the example for US regulation and clients? And then how does that tie into the conversation around state legislation, federal legislation, the US as a whole, really, when you take in Puerto Rico and these other outlying factors that need to be thought through on geolocation. And then you also start to look at the rest of the world, essentially, as cross-border global payments. So all of that is the regulation landscape that I look at. All of that has data points. All of that is what I'm trying to organize very nice in a Dewey Decimal System for Miss Hester Peirce. And I'm really busy. So this thing that the professor speaks of everyone like taking a break, I want to know what that is. But if they could take a break and join me in blockchain land, man, I've got some amazing data points for them.
Yeah, I don't know if taking a break is really the best terminology for it, but it'd be kind of nice to experiment with a break, because I feel like I'm going about as fast as you seem to be going these days, and there's always something new to think about, and especially here in the crypto space, because like you said, just looking at the history that you just gave on blockchain, and obviously we're accelerating at an exponential pace. Like the next 8 years are going to be so much more fast paced and so much more crazy. And the stuff that we're going to see 8 years from now is stuff that we can't even imagine right now, realistically.
We'll have stuff like sleep cells where you just put your head in this little machine and you close your eyes for literally 30 seconds and you just got 6 hours sleep.
I like that.
And then you go right back to work because you're going to need that shit.
I want something that'll fix this hunched over a laptop, crunchy neck thing that's going on for all of us that
get
are,
those stands
and
all the fancy keyboards, and you can stand on a treadmill and walk while you do it all day, and that'll keep you vertical and straight up. Yeah, whatever.
We'll just all be in our little like floaty anti-gravitational VR devices, when we're floating around talking to each other in real life.
VR.
VR, AR are changing everything. Yeah. Okay. Tell us. Tell us what your favorite thing is about VR in the blockchain space right now.
My favorite thing about VR in the blockchain space is the Continuum VR ecosystem that we've partnered with Do Good Public Service Academy, essentially a virtual campus that has been quote unquote rented out for Continuum Market to come and bring in blockchain brands and create rooms, education, content, connectivity channels like a customer service line, the one pagers, and really interact with the blockchain community. And we are doing a big giant test, inviting 20,000 users to join us on Sunday, the 28th for 12 hours to confirm that the system can handle that level of activity, to prove that this could be the new baseline for the educational system in the United States.
That's awesome. It's kind of funny how you just had this magic whole box of amazingness ready for VR on Act. That was an accidental transition to the perfect shill.
Give me another keyword. I told you.
This is what she does every time. It's perfect. Like she's like always got. We don't even have to ask answers. Ask questions. We can just say a word. Okay. Nonce. Go with it. Yes.
Nuts.
That makes me think of Knott's Berry Farm and roller coasters, which is a good way to think of a tokenized ecosystem. So Knott's Berry Farm and Chuck E. Cheese are kind of like tokenized ecosystems where the token is only good like in that ecosystem. And what's happening in the blockchain legislation world right now is there's a conversation between if someone creates a token and it's just inside the four walls and it's a Chuck E. Cheese token, and they didn't actually intend for it to get onto an exchange, but technically anyone can list it on an exchange. Once it's on an exchange, then it has value and becomes murky security token thing. And so that is what has to get taxed from the blockchain legislation world. And so basically they're having to go do we just blanket all Chuck E. Cheese tokens like security tokens until we know better? So that was actually a fun exercise.
That was, and actually
Give
that's
me
kind of an
another
interesting concept too, because it's the way that we define security tokens versus currencies and that kind of stuff really is going to define how miserable or not miserable it is to use things like Bitcoin and stuff going forward too. Especially, I mean, if Bitcoin is always taxed at, you know, a 25% capital gains tax, for example, you can't effectively use it. You know, it just
Right.
costs you too much to use it. So that the way that gets defined really influences how critical Bitcoin becomes to the ecosystem, honestly, in the long term.
I think all of the lobbyists that we have in blockchain technology fighting for Bitcoin really need to fight that argument and fight that battle with the SEC, who's pushing for the security side of things, because that means they can make money. If it's just income, they can't make money. So the greed is pushing them, as just as they always have, to justify it as a security. And see, here's the thing that separates cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. Let me use Bitcoin for an example. You can't go buy an Apple computer with your Apple stock. I'm sorry, you can't do it. There's no vendor that's going to take your Apple stock to buy a computer, but you can transfer and you can spend and buy something physical with Bitcoin. Therein lies the fact that it's a currency, not a freaking security.
So I have some data points on that, Mitch. So
Awesome.
you touched on something that myself and my head of market research, Steve Kwan, who has been in the traditional capital markets for 23 plus years. So basically, I once upon a time 2 years ago said, if you buy Tesla stock, if you buy a Tesla car, you're not buying Tesla stock. There is a huge difference in buying a product of a company and buying vested interest in a company. And then
Correct.
Does that vested interest give you voting rights or rights? Do you get anything along with those vested interest kind of golden tickets, right? So those become kind of some of the concepts that we're trying to educate my 8-year-old goddaughter to understand, that these are the things you have to understand of how value is stored and how the SEC needs to identify this. Personally, this is the world I dream of. In the next 8 years or less, I predict a world where we understand our assets have value and that our has value, and that gets reconciled in a blockchain ledger that is relatively transparent for the government to audit at kind of any point. You are a person and you want to raise your nieces and nephews, and that's what you want to do with your time. You should still have a living wage because that's valued in our society in some way, some form. Shout out to you, Jeremy Foreman, and the Do Real Good campaign, who is building this infrastructure right now with the Own Your Data principles for teaching people how to monetize on their time and their eyeballs and all the things that Google and Facebook makes trillions of dollars on. But I digress. So basically, I digress so much that I forgot where I was going with my original point. The Own Your Data Foundation and education and owning time and raising other people, raising other people's kids. Teachers is a bone to pick that I have. My sister is a teacher. My family comes from a whole bunch of educators. And I feel like teachers should not barely living above the poverty line when they're basically spending, 8 to 10 hours, helping raise your kids. So there's that bone to pick that has nothing to do with blockchain, unless you throw a blockchain solution at it, which I'm a big fan of. So people are going to be innovated in all of these. Thank you. That was the point I was making. Making all of these innovations so that the data rolls up to the state and federal taxes, where they're saying you owe me this, and the system almost becomes automatic. If you throw enough granular data, the AI can pick up on the things and the anticipation trends. You can start to have permissions where no, it can't take the money out of the account until this date, which is the game I'm playing with my utilities right now, with COVID kind of being like, can I get a week extension? I'm waiting for this to come in. The technology will just be there. You can do all of that with a click of a button, and the federal government's like, yep, green, unless you do something weird and then you get flagged as red. Right now, they're flagging all of us. It would honestly streamline their efforts and be a better use of their resource to ignore the majority of us that are just trying to live our lives. And that goes for the crypto folks that are just trying to go, I have a bet. This is a lot like a casino thing. I think I know what I want to do with my own money. Please just let me do that. And then trying to reconcile how much do I owe them at the end of the year needs to be a lot more automated. The states are already looking for that in their state tax and fee administration type of departments. They don't want to deal with the paperwork shuffle anymore. You don't even need smart contracts anymore. NFTs you can scan with your phone. It's a QR code. So anything that is a process, anything that's a handshake, blockchain can fix that. And that's basically what we're talking about tomorrow with Ali Medina and all of the entities in California that are mentioned in the stablecoin report.
So like, you take a currency, right? And I love that explanation and how you put all that together. But the other side to that, and it's kind of more of a stretch, but I look at currency, like say from Bitcoin to Litecoin, or from Litecoin to Digibyte, or from Digibyte to, you know, another currency, XRP. I don't like to say that term too often, but you know, that transfer of currency, how different is it really than the transfer of the United States dollar to the Canadian dollar, the exchange rate, and the amount of money you get when you give a dollar in American to Canadian, right? So there's an exchange rate difference because one's valued more than the other. And historically, there's never been a tax on that.
Right, which actually is a problem when it comes to cross-border payments. And I just say, there's never been a tax on that. Can we just move into the cross-border payments part? Can we just frog forward into cross-border payments? And now everyone is happy. And then it's based off of your geolocation of where you physically were with that device when you did it. Can't we just govern it with data? I've been saying that for years. And then along comes blockchain and I'm like, woohoo, the man of my dreams. So I'm super in love with blockchain. I think that blockchain can fix everything. It's why I'm full of data points. And I love coming on these shows and educating people about it.
That's awesome.
All right. So you mentioned something when you were talking just a couple minutes ago about trying to make it easier and trying to automate the process for determining how much you owe on taxes and that kind of thing for your crypto transactions, et cetera. So I'm kind of curious, what are your thoughts on the trade-offs for the more automated and easy that gets? What are our trade-offs as far as privacy and security goes with having, you know, more IRS linkage to exchanges and this kind of thing happening?
I love that question. So in the Discord channel, you will find that in December of 2020, right before we all went on holiday, right as we were all trying to get out of 2020 and just have it be over, the government was like, hey, how about we propose this legislation where if you just give us all of your homework, all of your dirty underwear, and you admit that you that you've been doing nefarious, if you just give us all of the evidence that we could prosecute you if we decide to prosecute you, because the rules aren't actually there yet, but we're going to say, you can pre-register to get screened. What you're really doing is like giving, you know, you're speaking to the cops at that point, not whatever, bad analogy, but I mean, you're giving them exactly what they would use against you if they decided to use it against you. So thankfully that did not go through. There's a bunch of grassroots movement that came through from the blockchain community. Was like, oh no. And this was before the January nonsense. There was still, you know, things, data points flying all over the place. It was cans and worms and cans and worms. It was a lot. But basically they tried to say, you know, just let us audit you and then we'll tell you if you're going to jail. And everyone's like, no, thank you. So what do I think the trade-off is? I think that the trade-off comes with the own your data principles. I think that our digital identity is something that we need to protect. I think the data wars are coming. And I think that people just need to be more educated around this. So every day, every moment right now, we get a flying around us where there's at least 50 companies going, what's Kristina doing? I know I helped them build that technology. So I'm aware of how Fortune 500 organizes your technology, especially your geolocation technology. And you have no privacy right now. Your personal data is available. Last time I checked, like 5 years ago, it was available for $3 million. Any company with $3 million could get the Facebook data set and they just go to town with it and create their own little data science playground. Moving forward, they say they don't do that anymore. That's not true. Basically, anything on your phone gets every piece of information they want. You don't know your terms and conditions. No one does. Today, I clicked 4 things where I said yes to terms and conditions. I have no idea what they're looking at. I assume that they're looking at everything. So on that principle, I assume that they're looking at everything. I want that back. I want my sheet. I want to be Brienne of Tarth and be like, no, you can't see that unless I tell you you can see that. I mean, that's basically what own your data is. Then you license your data to a brand like Google, and they can have it for the thing that they need to have it for. They ask your permission, you grant them permission. You set your settings, not them.
But they
We're
can pay
not
you
there
for
yet,
it.
but that's the world I dream of.
But they can pay you for it too.
Should be for it. They're making trillions of dollars off of it. Why aren't
Not
you making
kidding.
trillions of dollars? If
Oh, that's a
data is the
great
new
point with
oil and you're
blockchain.
the producer, you
It's
are
real-time
the
payments in
oil
exchange for
rig.
data.
You are the oil rig. You should be getting paid for it. In
Right.
all of this blockchain stuff, NFTs, in the IP sharing, in the concept of like royalties and tracking that, in the concept of really just having not siloed data, and what a world we could live in if every brand wasn't like trying to like hide behind their little data wall and we could actually accomplish some things. I'm kind of a data nerd. I can find data just about anything. The blockchain community is the one that says, I will show you all my data. And they're like legit above board, like all the brands that are in continued market. Please audit me. We're ready, Hester Purse. We're ready for this. Like they are begging for this clarification. And the way that I describe it is they just want, when you take your kids bowling and you put the little bumpers up so that like their ball doesn't immediately fall into the gutter, right? It's just that.
Right.
It's just that. They just want to know that they can roll the ball down and eventually it will get to the pins and that we can all live the American dream. And, blockchain, speaking of the American dream, see, I believe that blockchain is a really good solution for voting solutions. Casting your vote and authenticity of one, like an NFT, would be really good on blockchain and being able to wrap that kind of thing. So when it comes to privacy, I feel like we don't have it already. I want the infrastructure that we can have it. I want my layer of security around my vote. No one needs to know what my vote is, but I want to know that my vote got all the way to the supply chain of receiving that vote and casting that vote. I feel like our voices are not heard right now. And that's a whole lot of data points for a different show. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute.
There's so many crazy potential opportunities with blockchain, whether it comes down to voting or whether it comes down to using NFTs for tokenizing like vehicle registrations and land deeds and things like that. So it really, really starts to explode when you start looking at some of those little tiny niche things like that. You start talking about getting paid for your data. It opens up the opportunity for real-time payments in cryptocurrencies in exchange for your data. As they take your data, they give you tokens, that kind of thing. I mean, not that that's the optimal thing, but if they're going to fucking take your data, you might as well get something back for it. If you want to make that trade-off, maybe at least it's worth something to you. Every day we're making sacrifices. We're trading privacy for convenience every day, all day. There's no way around it. You can't really function in society if you don't trade some privacy for some convenience. It's just not going to work. That it goes on to things like what the future looks like with automated cars and your Uber is going to go out and charge itself up, and then it's going to go deliver groceries for 30 people and then finally bring yours home, and you're going to be getting paid for that in real time. I mean, this is not sci-fi anymore. This is fucking coming. Like, it's here. It's in testing already. Like, it's only a matter of time.
I'm fascinated with smart cities. Like, that's the Jetsons world that I was promised in the 80s that would be here by now, and I'm frustrated that it's not here.
Although I'm glad it's not here, because can you imagine that world on like Windows 95?
That is the problem. So there is a Darwinian data point evolution that happens here where, you literally hit a glass ceiling of what is the resources. And as you mentioned, Windows 95 was not capable of that. I don't know if you guys have seen these little things, but this is stronger than the computer that sent things to the moon in the 60s. And
what is that?
This is little shiny box.
Watch videos. Like, we use the greatest invention to watch kitten videos.
Oh my gosh. That's so cool.
I remember thinking I was so cool when I got my quote unquote first smartphone, which was a Palm Trio, like straight out of high school. But it was the early Palm Trio. It didn't even really function as anything. The internet really didn't work. Like it wasn't, and thinking that was a smartphone and getting all excited about that. And then my next evolution was, I think, the Droid or the BlackBerry Storm, which, if you recall, was the one where the whole screen clicked.
Yes.
So it would detect where your finger was, and then you clicked the whole screen, and the screen was like on a pivot in the center, and that was how you click. Like, it was miserable. It literally would take 4 minutes. If after it died, it took 4 minutes to boot up when it was brand new. And so I'd be coming home from work, and I'd have to get halfway home before my phone was turned on if I let it die at work. I mean, it was, yeah.
Oh, well, that's nothing compared to pagers when you used to get a page and you had to like hurry up and find a freaking payphone to call this person that you were supposed to be answering the page to. I mean, beepers and shit like that were, those were crazy times.
I feel old thinking about my first cell phone being like a little flip phone, but then again, my parents' first cell phone was the bag phone, and
right.
They didn't even have one of the cool, like Saved by the Bell cell phones. Their first actual cell phone was the bag phone. So
the horn on your car would beep when the phone would ring.
Yeah. But then again,
my first one was the Nokia brick. I mean, it was like a solid brick. It was so slick.
The other thing, that little button at the bottom left of your to the left of your clutch pedal, that one really gets a lot of those young people these days. Mitch will remember what that is for sure.
Which was it?
The button to the left of your clutch pedal.
Oh yeah. For your high beams.
Yeah. It's it's one of those confusing things.
I was like, what?
I love it.
It's kind of like 3 on a tree. People go, what?
Yeah, and people think you're talking.
I was thinking left of clutch, and I was thinking e-brake or something like that. I'm like, where's he going with this one?
Yep.
On my phone. I don't have a clutch on my phone. I don't understand. We were talking about phones, and now we're talking about a button next to a clutch somewhere. Where the fuck did that come from?
That's what happens when you have a conversation with the professor, man. It's just, what is it? It's called Golden Goat. That's my problem.
Golden Goat.
That's your problem.
Yeah. All right, Kristina, if you had to mechanize any body part, how would you mechanize it and what would it do?
She didn't hear you.
Sorry, I was saying you got 99 problems, but a golden goat ain't one.
No.
Yeah, that's true. I wish I had a golden goat. Actually, I don't wish I had a golden goat. Although I kind of do, because if it was like a golden goat statue, but not a real goat made of gold, because that'd be really problematic. Let's be honest.
Biblical. I'm sure there's a biblical reference in there of a golden goat, golden calf, something along those lines.
There probably is something. Yeah, there's a reference of everything in that. Okay, more important question though: if you had to mechanize any body part, what would it be, and how would you mechanize it?
I have so many data points that I don't want to share right now.
Oh, good Lord. So many data points I don't want to share right now. That was perfect. Somebody play the Jeopardy music.
Right.
If I think that's kind of where the weird, gross part of AI is not there will be a Darwinian that is crossed. Shit's gonna get weird, you guys. Like the robots are coming, things are gonna get weird. Things are already weird.
Yeah. It's the stuff that we don't even see is probably already so weird that we just don't want to see it,
Oh, a data point, the majority of the internet, like 75, it's some insane amount of number is like porn. Like it's just like, that's like the majority of what the internet is.
I think I turned my tongue into a conveyor belt. Just to stick my tongue on the plate and let it just automatically bring the food in.
Is it like a smart conveyor belt? Does it detect like faulty food and improperly temperature food?
You're going to know, they're going to know where you are in your geolocation. You're going to be like, this, my little personal identifier, and they go mirror and put something like in your eyeball or something. But you go, this is me. And they're like, do you want the pizza sent to you right now? And you're like, no, I'm taking a shower. Give me 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to be able to get it to you. I mean, like that's where we're at already. So, I mean, all it really takes is legislation that allows a drone to go flying around and bop me in the head to make that happen. A lot of this comes down to, they're trying to figure out how to do the math for all of this and have scalable infrastructure what is good for society. And I think right now is a really good time to like ask society what they want versus, you know, all these inventors.
Go figure.
We have voices. We could all say
Hello?
what we want. I mean,
Right?
it's not, I liken it to, you know, if you go to a doctor and you have like a medical condition, like you try to be as informed as you can about that medical condition. You're never going to be a doctor. You're not going to do surgery on yourself. You want some level of informed consent. And that's where we're at when blockchain opened Pandora's box of the fintech revolution and what it means to earn money and what new economy means and what it means for the bottom billion to have access to a smartphone. What that means is we all have to have a new education of this new economy. We have to re-baseline understanding. We all have to learn how to speak blockchain. And that's why I started Continuum Market, to give my cousins a fighting chance of being able to navigate this scape.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing how, you know, we talk about how fast everything's gone since blockchain actually started, right? And just look at from the day blockchain actually became a thing till now, governments are scrambling. They've never had the level of technology that is incorporated into this space. If you think of the brains that are operating within this space, all open source stuff, all these developers, all these smart big brain sons of bitches out there building this stuff for everybody, for humanity, not to make money off of what they're building, but to make money over time, but to better humanity with it. And the government has nothing like that. They have nobody that has the skill set that's in this industry. So they're scrambling. They're just like dumbfounded, and they're like chasing, and they're reacting instead of being proactive. And so until they can stop reacting, I think we're going to continue to see this.
I agree wholeheartedly. Professor, what do you think about that?
I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if we should move into dad joke territory, because I'm about to go off in a rabbit hole spiral in my own head that's going to take us places we don't want to go. So
actually, I'm ready to double down on this because it's you guys. I will never get this opportunity to do this kind of content again. Well, I will, but I'm actually kind of known for my terrible dad joke humor. A Bruhahnism is literally something like that. If it was a terrible dad joke, like you would groan, I would think it's hilarious. I would probably literally be slapping my knee thinking it's hilarious. So I'm willing to go down and do this challenge because no other podcast is ever going to ask me to do that.
all right, so
Never.
go for it. Tell us your best dad joke, and then I'll read one from the dad joke calendar, and we'll see how it goes.
All right. I love the suite of jokes that come from this entire line of jokes here. It's sweet, SUITE. Anyway, moving on. What do you call a guy with no arms and no legs in the middle of the ocean?
Bob.
I got about 100 of those.
What do you call a lady standing at the bar with one leg?
Eileen.
Yeah. Those are almost mean.
Well, I really like the what do you call a guy with no arms and no legs on your front porch?
Stu?
Matt.
Matt.
Okay. What do you call a guy with no arms and no legs in your mailbox? Bill.
A bill. Okay.
Unfortunately, my doctor.
I've got so many. I gotta stop. Okay, moving on.
Professor, give us a dumb dad joke.
All right, so the one from the calendar here for today is my doctor wrote me a note that I had type A blood, but unfortunately he was wrong. It's just a typo.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Or I don't know about you, but I find F5 refreshing. I know you'll appreciate that one.
I love the one that goes the shout out to an old coworker on this one. He goes, I go on my coffee break and then I go over to the tech guy and tell him that I just installed Java.
Wait, you broke up for me. Say that again.
Oh, okay. This is an old old joke. Basically, I love it when I go on my coffee break and fill up my coffee cup, and then I go over to the tech guy and I sip on my coffee and tell him I just installed
Just installed.
I love nerd jokes. My favorite nerd joke is probably, I don't know. There's no place like 127.0.0.1, you know, or there's 10 types of people in the world, those who like binary and those that don't. And, you know, most people won't get these. Mitch would definitely won't
Commercial
get these.
carpenters screw better.
Mitch is largely a Pebcac error.
It's not the size of the hammer, it's how hard you drive the nail. I mean, come on. I can go on with carpenter jokes too.
Carpenter jokes is honestly a world that I've never discovered. I didn't realize.
I mean, think about it. You know, you get a truck full of studs that pull up to your job site.
You got limber flexible wood, you got concrete, you got jackhammers, you got nails, you got all kinds of stuff. You got all kinds
and carpenter jokes.
And we even have at-ats.
At-ats. I love your at-at. Maybe that should be the description for the NFT when we publish your at-at. It's just a whole bunch of carpenter jokes.
There you go.
Don't do that.
No. Don't do that. Yeah, it was a bad idea.
You don't know. NFTs are selling for $20K right now, like just random NFT. So the interesting part that I found in the last few weeks, just speaking of NFTs and kind of the game, you guys saw what happened with Elon Musk and Tesla, and they bought Bitcoin, and then he was like, well, Dogecoin is great, and then Doge like skyrocketed, which for those of you learning, that's called I think it's called like a parabolic run, and it's not sustainable, but technically because it was undervalued beforehand, who the hell knows what's going on with Doge. Point being, Tesla finally figured out what Doge is, and he's like, that's the market cap. Can I just buy all of Doge? And I was like, I knew this was happening. I called Steve Kwan, the head of market research, and I was like, do you remember when we said these enterprise companies are going to start to figure out these coins are functional and you can do so many things with them? I don't want to learn how to go do that infrastructure. Why don't I just go buy one of these coins so that my brand can then have a tokenized economy? And I'm like, it's happening.
That's a really, really good topic, because a lot of people would argue with you all day that you can't buy a cryptocurrency, that you can't, I mean, you just have to technically buy it. It's a functional purchase, right? It's not like on paper. Yeah.
I mean, he has more money than God. I mean, I'm sure he has one shell corporation that's worth all of Doge. I mean, it's like, think about how many trillions and trillions of dollars.
No, God owns Amazon.
Yeah, I mean,
they're actually a couple dollars ahead of Elon right now. Him and Bezos go back and forth.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just there's a reckoning coming, and the new economy to include those of us that like dad jokes and carpenter jokes, and it's going to include the rest of us, and it's not the Wall Street elite, and it's not. I mean, it's one who got screwed over in the 2008 crash, which a lot of people in my family never did recover. They went from millionaires to they can't afford an apartment, and it never was the same. And we're being told in certain, certain rhetoric to just pretend like it's never going to happen again. And I'm seeing the signs. I'm seeing what's happening in all of these over leveraged. And if you guys don't know what quantitative easing is, definitely go Google that, because we're talking about this coins that either, inherently an asset in and of themselves and can grow without speculation because they're actually being used. Then you have stable coins that are supposed to be pegged to a fiat, which we're supposed to be getting away from fiats, because fiats are inherently unstable, which you see with the dollar right now and the lending and the Fed and all the data points that you'll see over at Continuum Market. I'm kind of obsessed with all this. The math doesn't make sense. And MIT and Harvard, new financial researchers and analysts and theorists and all of the smart people that are doing this, they're looking at this going, this economy makes absolutely no sense. Oh, and by the way, it completely leaves out the little guy. So if we all have a voice, we can vote on what we want to accomplish. And that's all capable with blockchain technology right now.
Absolutely. And I want to go back and touch on something that you said a little bit ago about NFTs selling for $20,000 because something happened today that's worth talking about in the NFT world. Are you familiar with Nifty Gateway?
I am very familiar with Nifty Gateway, and we'll give a shout out to Wax and Rarible and OpenSea and a couple of the other NFT crew.
My favorites.
Shout out to Bitcoin Origins. Shout out to the guys, the Nifty Gateway, Bad Crypto Podcast, Joel Com and Travis Wright, and their project, which is called, come on, Coin Genius hard on it, and I'm blanking on the name. Blockchain Heroes. Blockchain Heroes is another good one. Shout out to what's, oh my gosh,
we only
what's
limit
her
our
name?
guests to 4 shout outs, and you've surpassed that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're blocking shots.
You're way past that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, a little bit about NFTs. What?
Oh yeah, I know you do. Exactly. Yeah. So Nifty Gateway, they they're open editions, right? Where they give like 5 minutes to sell just as many copies of one artwork as people want to buy. Tonight, Mad Dog Jones did an open edition, and they sold $3.9 million worth in 5 minutes.
Holy shit.
Wow. I'm more excited that Christie's and some of the bigger like auction houses are getting into it and take it very seriously as well.
Yep, exactly.
So I look for the international movement because there's always going to be cool things that are happening on the ground in the trenches. Someone innovates, someone's doing something. I look for, does it kind of catch steam? Does it get momentum? Does it have legs, and can it run? And so you kind of watch it go from crawl, walk, run. And you see big institutions come in and like usually just start running alongside them. So it only takes one trailblazer to prove it's possible. And right now anything is possible. And so I hope that your audience is dreaming up how they can be rich one day, because their time and their dreams and their efforts are worth it. I have people talking about putting NFTs around their meditation content, and it's authenticity, that it is your work is really what we're talking about here. So if you have a following, if you have a platform, if you have a thought, it's worth it. And as we go into National Women's Month in March and doing International Women's Day, Amplify Her Voice Summit on the 8th and the 9th through Sheconomy. This is about educating women all over the world. I think they're getting close to saturation for, I don't want to quote the numbers in case I'm wrong, but it's a lot. 60 countries, 175 speakers, 30 sponsors, and we're trying to get about 1 million participants around the world to understand that anyone in the world with a $10 cell phone can be an entrepreneur, have a voice, make money from their data, make money from their digital presence, make money with a podcast. You can do it too. And if you don't want to do that, and you are like me, like a project manager, and you're like, I just want to project manage and help someone else do it, that is a valuable skill in this new economy as well. We are all working from home. So whatever you can do, whether you are able-bodied or not able-bodied, I'm working with Wounded Warriors in the VR world of trying to get access and ADA compliance for these kind of technologies. The world is our oyster right now. All of you folks out in the audience who think that you're just an average schmo, dream it up and say that you want it, because people are ready to listen to the average schmo right now. Like, we need our voices to be heard.
Hey, Professor, you think I should give her a sneak peek at the NFT we're gonna do? Because I know she hasn't seen it yet.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes, this is the hybrid. Because so I've been doing a lot of NFTs with physical stuff, but it's more like physical paintings and things like that mixed with digital manipulation and stuff. And this is taking it up a notch. Mitch has been thinking for a long time about how he can incorporate his carpentry into the NFT world. And minting cabinets just wasn't tickling his fancy, so
no, definitely
he has discovered an opportunity.
So I'm a big fan of physical NFTs. I'm a big fan of digital NFTs. You have Star Wars carpentry, custom, hand built, one of one physical items from. That is epic. That is part of your NFT world. Here, I want you guys to think about something else. So that NFT is that physical thing that you can physically touch, right? You can also do an NFT that goes along with that as a digital VR reconciliation that you can project digitally in a VR world, like a man cave, essentially, if you wanted to. There's also things that you can do to take copies of that and then have revenue after the fact. So if you have a one of one, but you sell, you make 500 copies and then you sell those, that's available. Plus my favorite, which is dynamic NFTs, which means the NFT can change and evolve based on what the programmer set as the rules at the beginning. So like if you go to a specific physical location, if you engage with a particular person, if you do this, then that. So in computer language, it's called if this, then that. And we can stack a whole bunch of them on top of it in NFTs. It's really cool.
Oh yeah, that's one thing that I'm deeply looking into. I got my application out there for async. I'm looking to get into some of that. But on the back end of things, I've been really thinking about some smart contract tricks that could result in some really interesting NFTs. Both from the dynamic standpoint and also just from finding interesting ways of acquiring data within smart contracts, which is interestingly difficult. The concept of oracles and all that, trying to deal with getting data from outside sources and stuff. It makes it a challenge, but that makes it exciting.
Well, you're making my data heart go pitter patter here. So let's dig into that. So let's talk about acquiring data, because my specialty comes from once it's in, then I cleanse and normalize it and standardize it. And then you can what you need in the intelligence engine. But what you're talking about is shard data. And that comes, so we're going to get a little bit into the weeds here on not basics. This is like the PhD level. But basically, I've been introduced for several years to a brand called Prasaga, and they are our title sponsor for the 228 20K VR World event. What they have explained to me is with their blockchain, it's supposedly, and they're up for peer review through the ecosystem, but supposedly they solve the scalability issue, because that's always the bottleneck, right? Is how many transactions per second, and can you set up to basically Department of Defense levels that are needed for data standards. It's a very important thing for SecOps, and so not all blockchains will scale. Bitcoin certainly will not scale. There is technology in the tech stack that tells us will it or will it not scale. Trust me, it won't. But basically for Prasaga, they say that they will, and they have node technology. So I'm just going to throw this at you because you probably know more about it than I do. They have node technology, they have mining technology. Then the nodes in the smart contracts, the data pieces in the smart contracts are able to move as shards and kind of be tangentially tied to, like one shard can basically exist in 4 or 5 places at any given time. And then they run a whole bunch of I call it parallel processing and load balancing, but it's way more sophisticated than that. So can you tell me a little bit around the blockchain technical capacity, the blockchain bottlenecks that happen? I would love to hear from a subject matter expert just on what your thoughts are just around the concept of smart contract architecture, the nodes, and how the data moves through is something I'm absolutely fascinated with, so I can understand the universal digital identity handshake into an ecosystem. Once that's approved and that token can move around, sky's the limit on what we can do on interoperability.
No, that's way too easy for this guy. You're going to have to make him do it in like 10 words or less.
Well, honestly, I would say, I don't know a whole lot about on the sharding side of things and what's going on in there, because the thing that I'm running up against is before you get that deep, it's just an issue of trying to gather data from outside APIs and that sort of thing. So when you're running the smart contract on Ethereum, it's processing on every single computer that's running a node, right? So the important thing is that when the contract executes, it has to execute with exactly the same result on every single machine that it processes on. And if it doesn't, then the contract will fail. The execution will fail. So say you want to go and you want to write a smart contract that let's look at something extremely simple. You just create an NFT that does nothing but show the Bitcoin price. That's it. Okay. And you want to just update it based on Binance's API's current price listing for Bitcoin or CoinMarketCap, or whatever API you want to grab it from. Just one.
Okay. Use CoinMarketCap because I actually know this is on that one. And
okay, great. So let's use CoinMarketCap. And so let's just say you want to query CoinMarketCap's API and just grab the Bitcoin price and then update the image displayed on the NFT to show the updated price. Quick
question, important product requirement here, Professor.
Right.
Are we scraping the Bitcoin price from the CoinMarketCap website, or are we actually ingesting the API and like the fire hose portion of it and just taking that teeny tiny little piece out for our application?
I was assuming just pulling pulling the endpoint on the API and getting the listing of prices, and then pulling the Bitcoin price out of that. But at the same time, if you scrape the website, it wouldn't change the point that I'm making here. Actually, the same thing would apply in both cases. So the issue comes down to then.
It's important to know the difference between an API endpoint and if you're scraping. So in your intelligence engine, it makes a huge difference. So
yes, it does absolutely make a big difference. But with this particular problem, it doesn't matter, because the problem stems with getting a different result when you query it at a different time. So if you're scraping it, let's just say, for example, you submit your smart contract. The smart contract calls the price for Bitcoin, and it's $10,000 exactly, right? And then 30 seconds later, it's $10,000 or $10,001, right? So the first group of nodes calculated it at $10,000. They got a certain response or a certain result back. The second set has now gotten $10,001, and maybe a few seconds later, another group of computers or nodes gets the code and runs it, and they get $9,958. Well, it doesn't matter. It's different. And so then the smart contract fails, it all blows up, and it doesn't work. There's not a reliable way to truly actually pull, because the price changes. You can't run, there's no way to make every single node run at exactly the same time. And so that's what they're trying to do with things like oracles, where but you're limited in what you have. And an oracle is more or less a data source that can guarantee that the data source, or that the result comes back exactly right every time. So it can't give you necessarily an exact real time, but maybe it can give you like you can set like a 5-minute delay or something. You get these from 5 minutes ago. And so you set like a specific time in there, and it queries from that exact time. So it can give you the exact data back every time. But that makes it really hard to get live data to manipulate your NFTs.
Really quick.
Yeah.
Let me pause really quick. We're going to have another layer here before we get to the end of this question here. So pausing really quick for my cousins to baseline for that. So basically, I want to make sure that my understanding here is correct. So you're looking for the Bitcoin price, whatever. You've got code that's wrapped on an Ethereum smart contract, and you're pulling the code to get that real-time update. The cousins need to baseline that the oracle, because it can't be at every node at all times. If you think about all the nodes like employees in a company, the oracles is like the executive board of directors that sits above that. And those board of directors, sometimes in some of the technology stacks, those board of directors can randomly change to any employee in the company, because nodes can move and randomize to protect against hacker attacks. So if that's what you're talking about with the oracle and kind of like that layer above where there's less nodes, but they kind of speak for the nodes, is that what you're talking about here?
Yeah, in a way, you kind of, when you say the board of directors, et cetera, that kind of gets to where I'm trying to go, because that's, a group or an entity that's sort of standardizing the data to make sure that the result comes back the same every time, in a way. I picture in my brain an oracle as being like a special type of API, not necessarily special, but just like it has a special function in that it serves a purpose to distribute a consistent set of data that you can query in such a way that can get the exact result every time, even if it's not, it's limited. It's very limited, but
it is a trusted, you'd basically whitelist it. It would be the same kind of thing that you would whitelist it. So I hear what you're saying, and I kind of want to flip it and have a different data conversation on this. So when you were first talking about that, I was kind of negating what you were saying in my head, because I was going, well, in a perfect world, but you're right, we're not at a perfect world yet. In a perfect world, it would look like this, and maybe you can walk backwards to your example. So in a perfect world, blockchain is adopted, and we have very little centralized data anymore. Most of our data is decentralized. Most of that data can be run on AI, where it's getting up and pulling and pinging constantly. And a lot of this stuff runs behind the scenes that we don't know. And Alexa level granular voice data is, just normal. I'm going 10 years in the future, right? In that scenario, when you're in a data piece of it, that in theory, you're supposed to be able to be a user at your terminal, and all of the data out in the world, when you sit down to engage with it as your human being interface, and you engage with the data and you ping it at that moment, when you ping it, the data source that it's tied to, in this case, the cryptocurrency API, Bitcoin price, is supposed to return what it says for that public API. So other people are ingesting that API at the same time. Whatever it says for that public API in general would be able to be reconciled through a consensus algorithm. So the part that I look at is kind of like the user terminal pinging the system. How do they know that that's right? Well, because there's a consensus executive board that makes sure that it's right. It's very technical, but they know for sure that it's right at that moment that you, the user, pinged it and it got returned to you. That's the world that I see. But to get us there, maybe you have some comments about what's to happen for some of the brands that are building structures like this, what they need to be cognizant of. Maybe they don't have their CTO yet, or maybe they have a brilliant idea, but what they would do from the data architecture. You're really, with blockchain, you're taking the status quo and you're flipping it on its head. You're taking everything you know about data architecture and you're flipping it inside out, like taking an orange and instead of peeling it, just grabbing it and flipping it so all the flesh is on the outside and the skin is on the inside. That is kind of the architecture that we're doing with blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an interesting point. It's kind of like what you just suggested was almost like a 2-layer consensus process, where you have the consensus to verify the transaction itself, and then maybe like a second level of consensus that while the transaction is processing is actually verifying the data that you're talking about, your inputs and that kind of thing. So that's kind of an interesting way to think about it. And, like you talk about, it's not a perfect world now, but as our performance capabilities increase, it becomes a lot easier, because the biggest issue is trying to execute on all nodes at the exact same time, which you just can't do, but you can get really close if we get more performance.
If you can trust that. So the way that I got it is Bitcoin's the granddad, and Bitcoin takes about 10 minutes to prove that it did what it said it did. If you can trust for 10 whole minutes that in minutes you're going to have the proof that you're looking for, if you can suspend belief for 10 whole minutes, then you kind of understand how the technology of blockchain works. So if you can trust for 10 whole minutes, then great. What the technologists in the world are trying to do is squeeze that down into nanoseconds and multiple transactions per second, because that's how the world's data really moves. And that Saga has said that they can do, and they have come into the ecosystem ready to debut and be reviewed here. And I have lots of euphemisms for it, including colonoscopies and enemas and all kinds of fun things. That's what our community does. They are ruthless, PhD level, brilliant thought leaders, brilliant blockchain advocates. These are the people that know whether or not you're full of poo. And so I think it's a good euphemism. What I really like about your example here is I have to take all of this really complex data infrastructure data points that I love so much, and then go, how am I going to explain this to my cousins? Why would my cousins care about this? And that always comes down to user experience. So if they're sitting in front of a computer terminal, as we all are forced to do now, there is essentially an option for you, the user, to opt in. You are gonna be on some social media. You can opt in to be on Facebook, or you can opt in to be on a social media platform that gives you money back in your pocket for being on that platform, for engaging on that platform. You as the user can sit in front of your computer and you can continue to work for a company that is not going to give you a pension and is not going to give you the ability to go travel to Paris where you want. Or you can sit down and use your skills to basically create a new life in this new economy and have value in all of society. Whatever your passions are kind of available now, you just kind of have to dream it up. From a data perspective, we're ready to start testing these things in what we call proof of concept. And that's why I'm working with the state and federal governments, because there is this rather large infrastructure in the United States called the OMB, which is Office of Management and Budget. And that is how all the money moves around and how appropriations move around, how your tax dollars move around, basically how everything moves around, kind of runs through the OMB. And they're like, well, we got this audit company that's like world renowned. I think it's called RSM. We had this other blockchain company and we created audit and we created transparency and we did this. Maybe we could fix some problems. And I happen to know that whatever your opinions are of the previous administration, they put a lot of thought about the last 5 years into blockchain infrastructure, and legislators and folks in DC are more literate blockchain than you think they are. And it is a bipartisan issue. And it is literally trying to help all communities, whether you are super affluent and you want to be able to be a better accredited investor, or you are in a disenfranchised community that if we installed solar panels, you could fix up your house and you could have a garden in your community. And you could have access to food, clean water, and these things that the federal level goes, that's a state problem. And the state goes, can you flip and help me here? We make enough money. We should be able to have this infrastructure. Then you've got Americans going, we live the American dream. And you've got this crazy conflicting tale of two economies. Wall Street and Main Street saying two very different sentiments right now about where we are as a society. I think that's wrong. I'm building dashboards to look at the data so we can all have this conversation at the same time, and we're all looking at things move at the same time. And I'm like, well, I see this because I'm the only one who can see what I see right now. So I'm using all my data knowledge to be like, oh, let's automate Kristina's brain and see what we can do when you bring some data together. The cool part about what you said is that was the challenge that I had when we were doing Coin Genius and doing data science algos and like predictive time series forecasting. When you pick a data source, what we found out is one data source not enough. Number one, many data sources in the ecosystem change their data after 24 hours. They have the data they send you, and then when you get like the historic report, it's slightly different than what you said to your customers the day before. That doesn't work in time series forecast data. That just doesn't work. So there's a level of maturity that has to come from the data provider in blockchain that say, we know you can use this for clean AI NLP applications. We know that you use this in series forecasting. The quants can use this. The math nerds can use this. All of you data scientists can use this. If the data scientists go, woohoo, it's part of the data party, then we're golden. But if they're like, that doesn't work, it breaks if you do this. And I'm like, then we can't use it. The data's not good enough. And that's a big piece of what I do with Continuum Markets, because essentially every brand in my 300 or so blockchain transparency market, every brand in there should somehow be a partner. I want to know how they move, how they're influencing the market, if they're increasing their monthly active users, what their social sentiment is, what my cousins think about it, what Wall Street about it. And as of right now, I can see it. I can see it on the news feeds that come through, and I make my predictions and I talk to my Wall Street buddy, and then we talk about a whole bunch of nerd stuff, and I see it happening, and 6 months later it happens. And I'm like, wow, I really wish I had told somebody about that. So I'm changing that and I'm just building it, and then you guys can all see it with me.
That's awesome. Well, if anybody's brain needs to be put into a dashboard, it's definitely yours. So I'm excited to kind of get into it.
There's absolutely no question about that. And if you don't mind, we're already at just over an hour right now. I would like to do a brief closing communication about something you and I touched on when we had our phone conversation, as far as 501c3s and crypto philanthropy and stuff like that. And before we really get into that, I'd like to just drop a shout out to my partner and I are going to Illinois next weekend, and our recipient from the fundraiser that we did in December, we are going to her house and we're going to build a first floor handicap accessible bathroom for her so that she can actually access her bathroom instead of having to make it up all these flights of stairs with her issues. We've secured materials from our supplier, so we're going to be taking those with us to actually do the work and get it framed up so that we can get plumbing and stuff. Yesterday I dropped a link on Twitter to kind of raise a little bit of funds if anybody wants to drop $1. I mean, a cup of coffee across 100 people or a couple hundred people can really add up. And any overage we have and this is just to purchase material, so any overage we have is going to go to her as well to help them financially to continue in their journey. So I wanted to throw that out here so everybody listening can hear about it as well, and to bring you up to speed on what we're doing. So, and I know that you are big into philanthropy, and you've talked about this. We've talked about this. So that was the other reason I'm bringing it up.
Well, I'm so glad that you did. My face hurts. I'm smiling so hard right now. So I'm so glad to hear that it's actually happening. Couple of data points right back at you. Number one, send me the link so that I can share it with the Continuum Avalanche community. Number two, any content that you're doing during that event, think of it like an HGTV kind of special. Capture that content for me, please.
Absolutely.
Especially the raw content and some of the bloopers and stuff. Leave that raw. We're going to do some NFT with all of that, and we're going to do some audience interaction, and I'll teach you just some really basic things to do about how to get those registered and take advantage.
That'll be
of
so fun. That'll be so fun.
So
And
I would
Clint Westwood's going to be with us, so he could actually be our little our camera guy and do all the video while we're doing this shit. Could you imagine? You got Clint in the back. Look at these guys. It's gonna be a riot. Okay, I mean, we're gonna have so much fun.
Get all of your content. Get all of your content, and I would imagine you're probably going to have a good 8 to 10 hours of content. Get all that, have a whole bunch of fun, rack up about 8 to 10 hours of content. We'll go through it together, and then I'll show you how you can turn that into NFTs and community experiences that only you would be able to bring to your audience.
See, and that's kind of like the amazing thing about how all this happened, and taking the gifts that we've raised to her the day after Christmas and doing a live video of it while we were doing it, there at her place, and actually giving the community that was able to give the opportunity to see the fruits of their actions. And how often do you give to a charity or you give to a cause and you never really see, you hope, and you never really see the fruits of your efforts. And so to feel that and to give people that joy of the true gift of giving is to see the other person and to experience their joy from your gift. And so I guess that's kind of what the special thing was for me. And it's just pretty awesome. I'm ecstatic to be a part of it and to continue this on. So this will be awesome.
Well, I'm so proud of you for getting involved in philanthropy and opening a 501. I think you said a 501c3.
We're working on that.
I think there is, 20 different types of philanthropic organizations you can do. Go to, I hope this web is up. It's www.501CX, I think is it. And it's just like 501c, all of the other options that are available there. And that is ways that you can get involved with philanthropy. A big piece in the blockchain community is about if you're going to get yourself on wealth management, eventually you hope you have enough that you can give back to people less fortunate, that you can give your time, you can give your money, you can give resources, you can donate that you no longer use. You can do what Mitch did and organize a pool of resources to be able to change someone's life. And that all of those things essentially from a data point are ricochets throughout the community and show that the fabric of the community are even stronger. And so we're trying to show more of that transparency in the blockchain brands. But Mitch, you said something, one of my favorite topics is revolutionizing the transparency in philanthropic organizations. To show my grandma that her $50 that she contributed to that cause, maybe a veterinary's office in Michigan, gets all the way to Michigan, and they use that veterinary fund management to buy these 20 cases of dewormer, and we're able to change the community for the better. Those type of media narratives are now possible through this digital connectivity and through the data world. And I think that those are some of the news stories that I wish I got more exposure to. If I could curate my own daily news, it would not be what the Kardashians were doing that day. Right. I would want to hear more stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was a lot of fun. We had a blast. And I mean, even the technical side for me, a lot of that stuff interests me, even though I don't fully understand it. But that's okay. I mean, I wish I was around I wish this was around 20 years ago for me. I think I would have been able to grasp a lot more, but that's okay. And we all have our part. We all do our part in this industry and in this movement for humanity. And I think that's what makes it special, is that we can all do our own parts that we have strength at, and combined, it's just incredible.
I agree. It's the power of we, and I'm really looking forward
Exactly.
to bringing it to life.
Exactly. Thank you so much for
Awesome. Well,
joining us.
thank you so much for having me. And Mitch, I'm gonna throw one back at you. I would invite you to every Friday we have our weekly continuum get together. Every Friday we have something going on between here and 3:31, and I would invite you to come and mingle. We're gonna have a table that's called Blockchain for Brand Newbies, and that is actually the title of my speech at the Amplify Her Voice Sheconomy on March 8th and 9th. So I am actually creating this. I am opening channels for people who have never, ever even heard of blockchain before, like my family, and open these channels for them to learn in kind of a safe swimming pool environment before we go chuck them out in the middle of the ocean.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I look forward to joining when I can. And thank you so much for extending that invitation. Guys, tune in, follow this lady. She's amazing, as you can very well know from this episode. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. This was an amazing podcast and an amazing live stream. So again, I can't thank our community and the support of our friends enough for all they do for us. So
absolutely. Thank you all for that. We love you all. Also, shout out to coinflip.tech for sponsoring this episode. Check them out. I should say CoinFlip ATMs for sponsoring this episode. Check them out at coinflip.tech. There's a map on their website where you can take a look at all their ATM locations. And maybe with some luck, there's one around you, and you can go out there and buy some crypto. Or if it's a two-way, you can even sell it. But
don't
sell crypto.
Right. Hold. I didn't hear that. Or you can use their over-the-counter desk. Their over-the-counter desk is amazing, and I would challenge anybody to shill me any over-the-counter experience that they've had that is even comparable. And I say that because I don't think you can find an experience that's better, because I've done it, and the physical and personal response and communication you get for doing this over-the-counter trade is incredible. And kudos to these guys for pulling that off. I spent a good part of my day today passing out discount codes at the CoinFlip ATMs, and helping the community to be able to buy. And it was crazy how many people came in to actually purchase crypto while I was there. So it was exciting to see and to know that this movement is really, really, really taking speed. So again, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, guys. It's so good to see you. And thank you to your audience. I can't wait to see them at Continuum Market events and learn more about the exciting world of blockchain.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristina. You guys
Bye,
take it
everyone.
easy.
Take it easy. See ya.